Hey everyone, I'm Michelle with Next Chapter Counseling. I made a video last week that talked about a common source of conflict in many relationships, which is when you have one person in the partnership who wants to go out, socialize, do things more often than the other person who might be more of a homebody, prefers just, being at home, doesn't like to go out as much and socialize. So last week, the video that I made was really addressing the partner who is the more social of the two and how they can communicate with perhaps their less social partner on how to basically come to some kind of resolution when it comes to making plans and how often to go out together and how to compromise on this. And today's video really focuses on the partner who is the social one, so to speak. So if that's you in your relationship, this video is one where I'm going to give you some suggestions of how you can communicate with your more social partner about what would feel comfortable for you so that again you guys can reach an agreement on some things that you can do together as a couple, but we want it to feel comfortable for both of you and not like you're constantly being pushed outside your comfort zone and made to go to events that you really don't want to go to. So I'm going to recap a concept that I talked about in the last video just real briefly. And I talked about this concept for why we say no to things. Like when we get invited out to something, what leads us to saying no? And really the reasons for saying no fall into two categories. Situational categories or stable categories is what I call them. So situational categories are more those last minute things where you're wanting to go to this, but something happens and you can't go after all. You start to not feel well, something just happens that throws a wrench in the works and it's kind of a one-time thing, but now you can't go. More stable factors are what I'm going to be talking about in this video the same way that I did in the last one. So these are reasons for why you would say no that are less situational and more have to do with who you are. So some common sort of stable reasons for why people say no to going out for making plans is introversion is a really common one. Social anxiety is also a common one. And just flat out, you don't like the thing that you're being invited to. It's just not in line with who you are. It feels way too far outside your comfort zone to try to go to that, even if your partner's really wanting you to. So again, we're going to look at more of the stable factors at play here for why you may not want to go out and do things with your partner as much as they wish you would. So if any of those things that I named are kind of ringing a bell for you, that's what this video is really going to be about today. So in terms of what you can do about this, the first thing that I recommend is that you start getting really honest with your partner for why you're not wanting to go to some of the things they might be asking you to go to. So it's really easy to give what may sound more like a situational reason of like, oh, I'm not feeling well, or oh, I would go, but work was too long today. And don't get me wrong, sometimes those are legitimate, valid reasons for what's happening. But I want you to really look at, okay, is there an underlying stable reason for why I'm not wanting to go to this thing with them? You can only tell your partner you're sick so many times without actually being sick before you start to raise suspicion and to have them go, is that really what's going on here? Because you seem fine. I want to make sure you're really being honest and authentic with your partner about why you don't want to go to things, even though that may be hard to do. So if you know that you've kind of been telling your partner little white lies about why you're not going to things with them just so that they leave you alone, now is the time to have that stop. This may be really hard at first to start getting honest, and even if your partner doesn't like the reasons that you're giving them, it's important that they hear the truth. Because again, they may already have times of being like, is that really what's going on, or is this something deeper? Now's the chance to tell them what the deeper reasons may be. First, you have to know what those are for yourself. So really start checking in with yourself. When your partner asks you to go to something with them and you get that feeling in your gut like, oh, I don't want to, reflect on why that is and get real with yourself, and then muster up the courage to get real with your partner. Just saying, I don't feel like it is not a good enough reason. And what I mean by that is that it's not like an in-depth reason. Tell them why you don't feel like it. Give them a little bit more so that they're truly understanding more of where you're coming from and what's actually going on. So that's the first thing I really want you to start doing with your partner, is to start giving them honest reasons for why you're not going to things with them that they're inviting you to. The second thing I recommend in terms of how to communicate with your partner about this topic is that a lot of times what typically happens in a relationship is one person will say, "Hey, we got invited to this thing. Will you go with me? Are you free?" And you may say, "Nope, I'm not going to go." And even if you're giving your partner a little more information about why you're not going, this can still feel like a big letdown to your partner, because they just hear no after, time after time after time from you at certain points with certain situations, perhaps. You're consistently maybe telling them no. So, what I recommend is, instead of just saying, "No, I don't want to go to that. No, I don't want to go to this," is to change the way you answer that question. So, the structure that I call this is not this, but that. So, for example, if your partner comes to you and says, "My friend invited us over to their house for dinner, and they're inviting some other people, and it's going to be like a get together, will you go?" And that just sounds so uncomfortable to you. To say, "No, I don't want to go, and this is why. But I would be totally fine if we all went to the movies together sometime." And giving your partner an alternative. If your partner has, let's say, like a big family, and there's a huge family get together, there's going to be like 30 plus people there, and your partner wants you to go, and that's just so much for you, and you might say, "No, I don't really feel comfortable going to that because it's so many people, but I would feel fine if we had, just like your parents and grandparents over for a barbecue sometime." Start to give your partner, these are just random examples, but what I want you to do is start to think about, well, what would feel comfortable to me? Where would I feel okay going? Or who do I feel okay being around? Maybe I don't want to be around that many people at once, or maybe I don't want to do it in that particular setting. But start thinking about alternatives that you can give your partner, so that instead of hearing no, 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 what they're really hearing is no to this, but yes to that. And most people typically respond pretty well to that. So start to give some other suggestions of how you and your partner can compromise, so that they're getting the socializing they're looking for, and you're still feeling comfortable and not like you're being put in a situation that feels like it's too much for you. So that's something I recommend you start doing if you find yourself again saying no to your partner pretty regularly for social events. Start trying to find where you can say yes a little bit and see how that feels. The very last recommendation that I'm going to make, which may sound really cliche, but I'm going to make a recommendation of self-care. Now, I know self-care has kind of become this buzzword that we throw around a lot. What does it really mean, and all of that. I could make probably a whole other video just about what self-care is. But in the context of this conversation, what's really important for a lot of people is that they make sure they recharge their battery after a social event, especially if you're an introvert. Social events are going to be pretty draining. So what happens for a lot of people who don't feel as comfortable going to social events, you maybe go into the social event with your battery at maybe 50% energy level. You go to that event, you get drained, and then afterwards you may not get the opportunity that you need to fully recharge. So then you're just hanging out at 10 or 20% the rest of the day, and it doesn't feel good. So what I really recommend is that you think about for yourself what it takes for you to feel fully recharged. For many people who are introverts or who do have social anxiety, this may look like doing something kind of individually on your own. Video games, books, watching a movie, something that's probably a pretty quiet activity at home. But it might be other things. It might be going for a walk or going to the gym. It might be cooking, whatever things you enjoy that make you feel alert and energized. Ideally, you want to try to, if you can, do this either before or after, or both, before and after the social event that you're going to, and see how that affects your experience when you go. You might be saying no to your partner sometimes because your battery isn't fully charged. But if you knew that you could go into an event, have your battery fully charged when you go in, knowing your energy level might drop while you're there, but that you have a plan and a way to bring it back up to 100% when you get home, the whole experience is going to feel a lot different and hopefully less taxing. And hopefully, even further, you and your partner will have fun together. It won't be this dynamic of you dragging your feet and going and them like pulling you along and trying to get you to have fun and you just can't muster it or fake it. Like, we want it to be that ideally you guys can start compromising on what feels good to both of you, and that you have some strategies to take care of yourself when you do have to go to an event that might be pushing yourself a little bit, and that you're communicating honestly with your partner about what feels good or what doesn't for you. So those are the suggestions that I have. Again, if you're a little more on the homebody introvert side of things when it comes to socializing, so that you and your partner can hopefully reach some resolution and some common ground here. If you have a question, send it in an email to me, nextchapter.michelle@gmail.com, and I'll answer it in a future video. Thanks, everybody.